The widespread protests against racism and police brutality, which began in the US, have now spawned a huge variety of street art. So much so that the curators of the Smithsonian National Museum in the US intend to archive many of the collectibles from the protest sites. So what exactly are the museum curators looking for? This report tells you more.
He is human, bro.
His nose is
you can put him in the car. Right now.
The killing of George Floyd by the police has shaken the social situation in the United States. Thousands of Americans have hit the streets, protesting against police brutality and deep-rooted racism. From New York to Washington, D.C. and even in rural communities which are predominantly white. George Floyd's murder has struck a raw nerve. Graffiti artists have created protest murals across the country. Curators from the Smithsonian National Museum have begun collecting artifacts for an eventual exhibit.
The kinds of things we like to collect really are things that help us to tell the story about this present moment. It could be a T-shirt. We are looking at the mask that folks are wearing, saying, "I can't breathe." It could be a baseball cap, a button, or protest signs. And in some places, artists have gone by and painted murals on some of these boards. And I think those would be interesting objects to collect as well.
The graffiti and murals from the Black Lives Matter movement of the present is vastly different from the protest artworks of the 1960s civil rights era. Back then, the focus was on visual consistency. Much of the protest art was done by professional artists and graphic designers. This time round, both professionals and amateurs have designed the protest art. The COVID-19 pandemic has also left its mark. Masks with words, "I can't breathe," are omnipresent.
If you look at some of the signs, the protest signs from the 1960s, the civil rights era, most of those signs were actually created by professional artists and graphic designers, and they were also professionally printed using either some sort of silkscreen technique in most cases. And so that's very different. You can get this incredible technique where they use a sort of silkscreen or lithographic technique to give some sort of consistency between the different signs, even though the messages might be different.
Who keeps us safe?
Another major difference is the global reach of the protests. From London to Paris, to even in far-flung places like Syria, graffiti in support of the Black Lives Matter movement has sprung up. The killing of George Floyd is a defining moment in US history. The protests it has sparked will change the racial dynamics. It is a moment where people, whether black or white, are coming together to create positive change. And the artifacts of these social protests, insist the curators of the Smithsonian Museum, are important to be preserved for posterity. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.